Welcome back to another video. Today we're talking all about riding a non-traditional route in Moab, 110 miles with a Moab local on the Honda CRF450RL. How did that go? We're going to get into it. It's going to be a little bit of a longer video because I'm going to talk about the route. If you're interested in the route that we took, I recorded the tracks for the route, so you can shoot me a message. I'd be happy to share those details with you, or even better, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment as to why you think this is the worst YouTube channel in the world when it comes to motorcycling, especially dirt motorcycles or adventure bikes. Leave those terrible comments below, but if you're interested, you can always contact us at zeromileadv.com. We actually have the website up, don't have the products yet, those are coming soon, but the website is up, so you can go there, you can contact us, and also get our free BDR packing list if you're getting ready to go on a BDR and you're thinking about that for the spring or maybe this fall. Go get that packing list, put it together for you, 100% free, go get it. So with that, let's talk about the day. So, first part of riding in Moab, this was kind of, what was cool is it was a non-traditional route. I rode with Tyler, he's the owner of Ride Moab Industries, RMI, Ride Moab Industries, super cool guy, really good rider. And he was like, hey, I think we go and we ride and we get out of the desert and we actually go do some single track up in the LaSalle Mountains. If you've never been to Moab, you'll see all the pictures you'll see, of course, is like Arches National Park, Canyonlands National Park, so it's like very deserty, lots of canyons. But the LaSalle, it's right at the base of the LaSalle Mountains. In not a lot of amount of time, you can be up in aspen trees in kind of a high alpine forest. So we did a little bit of both. We got exposure to the red rock, but we also got some high alpine trees. And to say that I was on the struggle bus in the single track would be an understatement. We did one section of single track. It kicked my butt. Not that the Honda can't handle it, my skills just couldn't handle it. Ended up wrecking, denting the frame on the bike. I'll show you more about that later. But once we got out to the kind of backcountry dirt road, he was like, I don't know, after that, do you want to do more single track or you kind of want to just cruise on some more like 50-inch and double track road? And I was like, definitely no more single track. I got my butt kicked. Let's just stay on the main road, which was super cool because again, I live super close to Moab. I go to Moab a lot. I'm in Moab probably, a few times a year at least. And I'd never really been up the LaSalle Mountains, up that far and up and over them. So the short description is basically we ran south out of Moab, up kind of the backside of the LaSalles, up and over between the two peaks. So if you're sitting in town and you look up at the LaSalle Mountains, there's two peaks. We kind of split the two peaks and then came back down, and there it is, I'll put the name of the road here because I can't remember. It's like Sandwash Road or something like that. Super popular road where all the classic trails are. Poison Spider, the old Lion's Back. If you've been to Moab before they closed that. When I used to go to Moab when I was in high school, like we'd go drive up just parts of Lion's Back, and we never did it, but you go past Lion's Back and Hell's Revenge and all of those kind of classic trails there in Moab. So with that, that was it. It was good. It was still hot. It was, I thought fall was here. It was hot. So we escaped to the mountains, did some single track. So that, subscribe, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, go to zeromileadv, get your free BDR packing list, contact me there if you'd like the tracks. I'd be happy to share them with you. And with that, let's get into the route. Okay, so first we started out and we kind of just headed south out of town. Really cool. Not a lot of people go south of town actually. Most people are kind of stay north and just do east of town there. When we got initially on this first 50-inch section of trail, a lot of big boulders. Actually here I kind of got in the, I definitely stayed right when I should have stayed left, but I was too deep into it and I kind of had to get out of it. So it was got pretty technical straight out of the gate, and I was like, oh man, am I gonna be able to hang with Kyle all day? Because that was a little rough, but it was short, it was fine, it was totally easy. Here, just kind of dusty and flat and fun and fast. And actually a lot of sections like this where it's steep down and then kind of some steep, loose stuff up. But I'm really used to that kind of stuff here, riding here in the BLM around my house in Grand Junction. I do that a lot. Then we kind of cruised up onto this like 4x4 road that looked like it used to be paved at one time, and then the pavement has slowly gone away because there's all these weird little mini sections of pavement that you kind of had to skirt in and out of. Kind of an interesting road. But this section of road was actually really cool. It was a bit of like a 4x4 trail, and then it kind of curved around and it followed this section of road, followed next to a actual trail called like Black Bear Trail or something like that. I don't remember, but it was actually really fun. And then here we're actually cruising in kind of just more fast flowy dirt road. Just to the left of that previous section back there is actually where they hold the Moab Hard Enduro. So we actually stopped there. I didn't film it. I actually made a few filming faux pas in this video in that I actually didn't film it. I should have filmed it, like the entrances and the gate. If you haven't gone, definitely go check that out. Check out the Moab Hard Enduro. It is pretty crazy. One guy actually did it on a KTM 890. Shout out to him. But Kyle goes a lot. He's kind of a local legend, and he knows and he spectates and like helps out with the race. So it was cool to stop there. Again, following along on this trail, kind of like classic Moab here, big rocks, sand, red sand, dirt. Really cool road actually, because I haven't spent a lot of time on the south side of Moab. So here we're kind of just working our way south to get to kind of the south side of the LaSalle's. And I actually thought from here we'd kind of start climbing up into the mountains because we were pretty close, but we actually, once we climbed out of this canyon, we actually kind of continued more east or west for a little ways, and then kind of cut back west to head up to the backside of LaSalle's. But this is all kind of like big bike friendly. They could have rode a lot of this on the adventure bike. Definitely didn't need the Honda. The Honda actually was really fun. The biggest problem I had with the Honda that day is that in a lot of these kind of loose corners is just the washout of the rear tire. One thing that Kyle was teaching me is that I definitely need to like work on modulate feathering and modulating the clutch to control the power around the corners as opposed to modulating the throttle. And if you know anything about the Honda, the throttle is a little bit touchy anyways, and so being able to modulate the clutch to make things better probably would be helpful. But here, this section actually, we ended up, again, another filming faux pas. I thought I was filming it, but I wasn't. So just after this section, we actually got on some cool single track in this area here, where I started filming here because I thought I stopped the video, but instead I started it. So right before this, we are kind of cruising on this crazy single track through the sagebrush. Definitely like a locals only trail. Like you definitely have to know the area and know these trails to get out here. And we didn't see a soul. So it was cool to get to this side of the Moab where you're out here in the sagebrush, and the sagebrush actually smelled amazing, but on these trails where there is nobody else. So, and it is now peak season in Moab, so because the weather is finally getting really good, so it's amazing to be outside. And so to be in an area in Moab and riding your dirt bike and not see a soul was quite the experience. It was super cool. But again, like definitely kind of like locals only trails. This section kind of reminded me of actually the Powerline Trail in Grand Junction. That's kind of a famous loop. It's called the Powerline Trail. You cruise through this like old riverbed wash, and then you end up following the power lines out. It's kind of a big loop. And this section is kind of almost reminded me of like the local Moab version of the Powerline Trail. And actually, talking about single track and locals only, getting over to this section of this track, we actually got kind of turned around, and Kyle had to like find our way through and kind of get us to where we need to go because he even kind of lost the track for a while. But you're out in like state land trust areas, so it's pretty much like BLM, I would assume. But yeah, kind of cruising again. Pretty easy stuff, like all pretty big bike friendly, except for the section that was single track that I didn't film. And that was probably my favorite part, and I didn't film it, so I wish I would have filmed it. But, you know, some rocky sections, but nothing too crazy. Definitely could have brought the big bike for sure on a lot of these parts, and it would have been fun like getting up to speed on some of these sections. But again, the Honda has plenty of power to get through those sections, so didn't need a big bike, but nothing like overly technical. Then we got up to this section here where there's just like this random like little lake that I had no idea was back here. It was kind of cool, and that's why I filmed this section. I was like, oh, there's a lake back here, and I had no idea. And here we are actually on the tracks. We are heading kind of a little bit, we're heading like southwest out of Moab, and in the distance you can see another mountain range called the Blue Mountain Range, or the Blue something. Kyle called it something. The locals have a name for the other mountain range, which is like another area to do a lot of cool riding. You can kind of see it back there in the background. I actually never really realized those mountains were back there, because every time I've come through Moab from the south side, it has been from the Colorado border side, through Paradox Valley, which is super cool. And we get pretty close to Paradox Valley, and you can actually see down in it. So to areas I've ridden before. And here, of course, Kyle's like, this trek isn't hard enough, so I'm going to take the hard route and go into this deep hole. And of course, for me and my skill set, I was like, no thanks, I'm going to take the easy route. But again, just spent a lot of the day, of course, Kyle was probably riding at like 1/10 of his speed compared to like what he normally rides. Here's another section that was kind of like one of the harder sections because it was just kind of a deep hole and like, how do I get out of it? But actually the Honda did really good. The Dunlap D606s gripped up just fine. Once I kind of got in there and got the front tire up, I was able to modulate the clutch and the power to get the bike right out. So it really wasn't that hard. And then in that earlier single track section I talked about that I didn't film, there were a lot of kind of sections like that and the bike did great. So really no complaints on the Honda from that standpoint. Again, here we are kind of continuing the sagebrush single track. The area, again, mentioning a lot, the area I didn't film that I thought I was filming, but I totally missed and totally made a mistake, was a lot like this. A lot of kind of loose, like soft dirt, single track in the sagebrush. Really fun, kind of a lot of these little holes. Soft enough to where if you made a mistake, you wouldn't get hurt. The sagebrush might be a little prickly, but not too soft to where you were like struggling to maintain traction or get through it, or a lot of like kind of washy stuff, which we get into a little bit when we come down the LaSalle's on the sand, I think it's Sand Wash Road or something like that. Of course, there's a lot of like red sand. But here again, we're kind of just picking our way back out to one of the main kind of county roads. And of course, instead of taking the road back, we take this alternate kind of double track line here. I will say it was really kind of good for my skills to go out and ride with Kyle, because you're trying to keep pace with him. And then when I came back to my local routes here in the BLM area of Palisade and Grand Junction, a lot of the stuff that has been challenging now doesn't seem that challenging. And then I'm just building more and more confidence on the bike each time I go out and ride with somebody that's a lot better than me. Kyle was actually riding a Husqvarna 501. You could also, one thing that we were talking about is you could tell his bike is definitely geared a lot differently. So one thing about the Honda is it's definitely geared a lot taller, whereas his gear, his bike is a lot easier. So I can get up to higher speeds on the highway, which is nice. But when you're out on the trails and you're trying to modulate power through technical stuff, sometimes it's better to have the lower gears on a little bit easier gears, essentially, if that makes sense, which really weren't a problem until we got into the single track. And that's where kind of the taller gears made things a little bit harder. But also, if I was just a better rider, probably wouldn't have been an issue either. Although Kyle was like, if it was me, I would put a 1/2 smaller sprocket on the front, which would kind of gear it down a little or up a little bit. I'm not sure what the right term is. Make it easier, essentially, almost like a mountain bike, right? Like smaller front chainring makes it, climbing up hills and stuff easier. It's like putting a bigger sprocket on the rear. Just makes it easier for the amount of power you're putting down. And he was recommending I would do probably 1 tooth down, because he said that's the equivalent of adding 3 on the back. And then here we are pretty close to the town of LaSalle, so we're just kind of due west of the little town of LaSalle that sits right at the base of the LaSalle Mountains on the western side, and we're kind of cruising this old kind of mining area, dirt road that services this mining area through here that you can see. In this, we were kind of just ripping. So this was totally like big bike friendly. Like you could ride a 1290 Super Adventure S. My first bike could handle this road with no problem, just kind of a basic dirt road. This is the kind of dirt roads you get a lot of on the BDR, especially Colorado BDR, with the exception of Section 2, is a lot of this. So again, like the Honda, for the kind of riding we were doing today, was perfect. More single track and more technical double track. The Honda's great. But on a BDR, when you're riding a lot of roads like this, I definitely would take the weight and the power and all the technical advantages of like traction control and all that stuff on these fast roads. I would definitely take a big bike over the Honda any day. Also, here you can kind of see we've kind of gone away from the LaSalle's. We've worked our way kind of west, and now we're heading just straight towards them. And we're actually going to climb up that right-hand backside, and then we're going to split over the middle and kind of come back down through our route. But back to the big bike thing, because a lot of people talk about like the Honda is the ultimate lightweight BDR slayer. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I don't know that I would use the Honda on a BDR we did 110 miles with the exhaust and the get ECU. At 110 miles, my gas light came on, and I have the bigger 3-gallon gas tank. So if you had the standard 2-gallon gas tank, I might have gotten to 80 or 90 miles with those mods. I need to see if there's a way that I can kind of improve the gas mileage. So here, as we kind of cruising, there's a dirt road that will kind of cruise up to like a camping area and a lake that's back there that actually will connect over to Paradox Valley, which I've ridden before. We got on this cool 50-inch like dirt track road. What was interesting here, and I think it's part of the way I ride, so if you have any suggestions, leave a comment below, but my lower back was just getting tired and tight. Caveat, I do have a tight lower back as it is, like when I'm doing squats or deadlifts, I'd really have to warm up a lot and really loosen up and stretch out my lower back, otherwise it will get really tight. And that's even like lowering the weight. I know all of you comment trolls, so leave your comments below about how to do proper form on deadlifts and squats, but even warming up a lot, keeping the weight low so I can have proper form, my lower back still gets tight. So here, like, I was having to find areas where it would kind of smooth out so I could sit down, take some pressure off my lower back, and then keep riding. What I also noticed too, riding on this section, is like if you watch Kyle, he just seems like he's just kind of relaxing as he's cruising. But for me, a lot of times I feel like the power of the bike is pulling out from underneath me and like throwing my upper weight back. So I'm like, I feel like I'm leaning really far forward, but probably not leaning far forward enough, because it's putting a lot of pressure on my hands and causing me to pull back. So leave a comment below if you have that same problem. Like when you're riding technical stuff, does it feel like the bike is trying to pull out from under you and it's like pulling you back and you're trying to hold on for dear life? Is that you too? But this section was actually probably one of my more favorite sections because it was a little rocky and a little more technical, and you're starting to climb up to altitude. I think we got up to about 9,500 feet, 10,000 feet at max, but it was actually really fun. I think for me right now in my skill set, the Honda 450RL, CRF450 or CRF450RL is like a 50-inch Slayer. If you're not familiar with like what a 50-inch trail is, it's basically kind of limited to vehicles that are 50 inches wide or narrower. So like ATVs, like the old school ATVs, which have basically been replaced by side-by-sides. Well, I think they're still somewhat popular. Or there are smaller side-by-sides that are that meet the 50-inch requirements. I feel like the Honda is just built for 50-inch trails. When we got on the single track, I really struggled. Again, likely because of my skill set, not because of the bike. The bike, if you put a good rider on it, they could rip through here. Heck, I've seen people riding the Honda at a bone dry stock, the 450RL plated version with like the crappy the stock tires, ripping motocross tracks on this bike. And so it's definitely not the bike, it is definitely my skill set. But with the bike being taller and not as good as skill sets, the single track really was hard. But this 50-inch trail was just a lot of fun. Kind of getting the shade, it was cooler, so it was really nice. And again, when you think of Moab, you don't think of like evergreen trees and this like awesome aspen forest that we were about to ride through up here. And as you can see, like the colors are starting to change. And again, just like this kind of riding right here, just these 50-inch tracks, like this is kind of my sweet spot. This is where I have a lot of fun. I'm riding, speed-wise, I'm riding at 80% of my limit, so I still have 20%. So in case something goes wrong, I can, I have some extra skills to help get me out of a bad situation. But it is just a lot of fun for me. And the 50-inch track is, I feel like, where I just feel the most at home on the Honda. And also I feel like it makes it more fun than the riding a big bike on a lot of 50-inch tracks, because we have 50-inch tracks all around my house, and I've taken the big bike out there. I've taken the Norden out there. I've taken the Tiger. I've taken the 1290 Super Avenger S. Although when I took the Super Avenger S, I had zero skills, so it was like super scary actually to ride out there. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be good enough to be able to ride. It's funny because I went out and explored some new areas yesterday, and I remember riding out there, and I'm like, I remember how scary just like a year ago those tracks seemed, or a couple years ago, 2 years ago when I was riding and I was on the 1290. So the Honda has really helped me just build comfort on, as far as my off-road skill levels goes. It's probably my favorite thing about this bike is because it is lighter, so it's easier to pick up. It's not as taxing as trying to get better off-road. So it for me, it's kind of the perfect bike. It's plated still. Here we're kind of still cruising this 50-inch track before we get up into the forest here. And actually, right as we come out of here, out of this aspen forest, is where we then start the single track. And this is where, again, I was like, definitely wasn't so hard that I couldn't do it, but it was hard enough that it was just above my skill set, right? Like it was just above my abilities. So here's like this side by side. I think that's like a 50-inch side by side. It was like one of the smaller ones, even though it was a 4-seater. I think it's narrow enough to fit through 50-inch trail. But here's where we start. So we could have stayed on that 50-inch track, but here and kind of looped that around. But instead we took this single track. And actually this first section was a lot of fun. So right through here, it was tight. I kind of struggled maintaining and keeping the bike on the track because it was so narrow, but it wasn't that hard. And it wasn't like the route wasn't very technical, which was good at this point. So there were a couple spots that were like kind of technical, some rocks, and I had to, maybe got hung up or stuck, but nothing that made me super uncomfortable. It was just kind of the tightness of it I was getting used to, but I was having a lot of fun. And it was still like here's a tight area where I kind of had to slow down and work my feet through to get through those logs. The other thing that I noticed, and we'll see later on, is that Kyle was pretty much standing up the whole way through this track, and I was trying to really work the clutch to modulate the power in these tight sections. So rather than using the throttle, I'm trying to use the clutch. And I felt that, I knew that I don't have the skills yet to be able to stand and modulate the clutch in the throttle the way I needed to do. I had to take the standing component out of it and just focus on really proper power and getting more forward on the bike to get through this single track. So that's definitely something I need to work on. If you have any good tips, again, leave those below. Like, how did you, what any good drills as far as like really working to be able to modulate that clutch for the power? What were some skills or things you had to learn? Here then we get into this just thick aspen forest, and actually because there was so much leaves on the trail, I thought I lost Kyle, and so at one point I actually had to stop and turn the bike off to see if I could hear his bike to make sure I was going the right way. But he had stopped and then like yelled for me like, no, you're going the right way. But you kind of creep down this hill, and then at this point I was like, oh, feeling pretty good. Here's where I stopped. But then he was like, no, I'm down here. And so kind of cruising through here, I was like, oh, I'm actually doing pretty good, like having a good day. And then here we stopped for lunch, kind of hung out for probably 15 or 20 minutes and enjoyed just kind of the perfect weather here. And then right from here out, it kind of pitched up and it got rocky on the single track. So not technical, like on my mountain bike, it would be easy. Like I would consider this like an easy blue/green trail. But with the rocks and the tight and the uphill nature of this trail, I got hung up a lot on stuff. Like you can see I got hung up right there. And again, here you can see where Kyle is like, he's just standing with ease and he's just kind of ripping through this. A, he knows the trail, like that helps, but it also B, he's just a far better rider than I am. And I think if I was able to stand and control the bike better, I wouldn't have gotten hung up so much like I did here. And it was just tough. And it was just relentless. So it was just kind of, here we were climbing out of this valley we are in to get kind of up towards the summit of the La Salles. There's like this dirt road that kind of cuts over the summit of La Salles. I think it's La Salle Pass. And we're kind of working our way up that. And so this trail just kind of was relentless the whole way. It kind of cruised, it pitched up the whole way. And it was like rocky and really tight. And so this was probably the hardest thing. Also very physically demanding. So I wasn't able to kind of just cruise. It required a lot of effort to keep the bike going, especially when I'm going slower because I'm just not that good, like trying to ride at 80% of my limit. You're going slower, trying to pick your way through this. So like keeping the bike upright and getting through the single track was hard. And up here, the road or the trail started to slip off. Here's where I kind of, Oh, that wasn't it. Actually, it's coming up here shortly. But like the trail, also a lot of the sections it started to just like cut off to the left, and so you're really trying to not make any mistakes on the right that then kind of deflect you kind of towards the left down the hill. But again, like the video GoPro doesn't really do it any justice, because like that corner right there was kind of it was a steep tight uphill turn. But here was actually really cool because I was like, oh, I've never been up the La Salles. I'm always in like the traditional like kind of touristy areas of Moab, like riding like Cliffhanger or Ahab on a mountain bike. You know, those are kind of the most popular trails on that kind of classic red rock terrain. So to be in Moab and up here at the top of La Salles was really cool. I actually had to stop here and I took a picture. So if you saw the thumbnail, that's where that picture was taken. It was right there. And then here, the trail just kind of keeps continuing. As you can see, like Kyle's just cruising, like he's standing up. Things seem to be pretty easy for him. And here is where I wreck. So it wouldn't be a ride on the Honda if I didn't wreck. So again, I kind of got deflected on the right, the bike pushed left, and there was like a triangle rock, and here's where you can see I put a dent in my frame. So when I laid the bike over, there was a rock that was kind of shaped like a triangle, and the bike landed right on it. I think in a lot of cases I was actually really fortunate that it dented the frame and didn't hit like the engine box or the transmission or anything else, because it could have just punched a hole in it and we're basically out in the middle of nowhere, and that would have been a disaster. So I feel like I got really lucky just kind of putting a dent in the frame there, and it's a decent sized dent as you can tell. But again, it wouldn't be a ride on the Honda if I wasn't dropping it, and so the fact that I had gotten that far without dropping it was a bit of a surprise. Although, you know, Kyle, one thing he was telling me is like, you just need a lot of positive seat time, you know, getting out, riding trails, and not wrecking. And so it was funny. I was like, oh, I did pretty good up to that point, and then I wrecked. So after that wreck, I kind of just like, I actually laid there for a minute, and how relentless this trail was on for my abilities, I was just getting beat down. And so especially through here, I was like, when does this end? You know, you're like, okay. And you just kind of gotta like find your happy place, right? You're like, here I'm stopped again, because I was just getting my butt kicked. I think I almost dropped the bike right there again. So I came up, bike started to lean left, the hill slopes to the left, and actually here it was like kind of steep up, and so the bike stalled, and then, you know, it just started sliding backwards. And so I'm just getting beat down. So at this point, like, I am tired. Here I was like, oh, do you need a break? How are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm getting my butt kicked, you know. And I think at that point he realized like this trail was like harder than he thought. But here we finally get out. So now we're back on that 50-inch trail. I think this trail probably actually loops around to the other one that we took up. So that probably would have been more fun for me. But I say it was actually good for me, you know. Initially, like wrecking and being tired, I was like, get me out of here. But afterwards, was really thankful that we did it. And I was really glad that he took me on that route, because he really pushed my abilities and kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone and pushed me to get better. And now we're kind of cruising over La Salle Pass. So we kind of split the peaks. Again, another filming photo. Actually, no, my battery died. So I tried to film it, but my battery died and I didn't have time to stop. But here you can kind of look, you're kind of looking over the classic Castle Valley area. So if you've ever mountain biked the whole enchilada when you're on that red cliff area, that's kind of the area you're looking on. So of course I had to stop, take a photo. But now from here down, we're pretty much just ripping dirt roads. So here all the way back to Moab, totally big bike friendly. I think if you were looking for a fun route to do on the big bike, you could follow my tracks, but instead of taking the single track, just maybe stay on that 50-inch or on that dirt road all the way up and over. You can kind of do a real cool tour of Moab, because now you're on like this sand wash road, I think is what it's called. And this just passes some of the most iconic spots in Moab as far as like off-roading goes, with the exception of Arches National Park. But you're not off-roading out there, you're just kind of viewing all the cool arches. But as far as like off-roading goes and all the iconic areas, this road will take you through it. It is very sandy, as you can see through here, but the Honda did just fine. Now I definitely, I'm only doing like 20, 25 miles an hour. Kyle's just ripping ahead of me, because he's way better than I am. But you can see now we're getting into kind of that classic red rock look right at the base of the LaSalle's. Here, I think Kyle had to take a break because he was tired of waiting on me. But yeah, so at this point now, like, I'm feeling better again. So, a lot of times I feel like I need to find sections of trail like that single track that kind of pushed me out of my limits, but then I can get back out and kind of enjoy the day. What is ironic is after I got back, we were staying in our RV when we were out there. When I got back, my wife was working, and I got back to the camper, and I was like, I am beat. Like, I felt like I did a huge mountain bike ride. I was out pretty much all day. I was, I got over to Kyle's shop at like 8 o'clock, and I didn't get back until 2:30 or 3. And so, like, I mean, we were out all day on the bike. We probably didn't leave till 9:30 or 10. I think we probably left around like 9:45. So yeah, basically riding from 10 till 2:30, 3. And when we got back into Moab, it was hot this weekend. So it was like 90 degrees, which I think is like 26 degrees centigrade. I think is roughly the transition there, 26 degrees about. And so it was warm. But again, here was really cool because you're just getting into that kind of classic, what everybody thinks of as Moab. What would have been really fun is if there was a way to link onto a shorter section of maybe some of the classic trails that are off of this road. Like, could we have like snuck on to like Hell's Revenge, or we even passed the parking lot for the iconic Slick Rock Trail, which if you've never ridden the Slick Rock Trail, it is not easy. On a mountain bike, it is not easy. It is like super steep down, super steep up, but it's all rock, so there's a lot of grip. But it is just like a gnarly workout. So here, again, just now getting closer to like that classic Lionsback area. If you haven't, there's a video, I think, of a Bronco that loses its brakes coming down Lionsback. I think it's part of one of the reasons why they end up shutting it down. When I was in high school, I'm actually now going to give you my age because if you can do the math, you can tell how old I am. But when I was in high school in the late 90s, we used to go out every year for Easter Jeep Safari, especially after we could drive. So like when I was 16, I had a Jeep, and all my friends had Jeeps. We would go out to Moab for Easter Jeep Safari for the weekend, and you could still ride Lionsback. But shortly after that, maybe about 6 or 7 years later, they end up shutting it down. But this is just kind of that cool, what you imagine Moab to be. So it would have been really fun to link single track into some kind of the more iconic classic Moab routes like this. I think if I would go back, I might take the Honda back out there later this fall in the off season, maybe like in November when it's a little bit quieter, and try some of these, maybe ride with Kyle again. He said there's a cool canyon that he thought I would really enjoy based on like my skill set and my skill levels. But here again, like, this is all super big bike friendly. So if you want to take your big bike out there, you could pretty much do all of the stuff we did with the exception of the single track. So like there's some single track, and actually the first single track stuff we did, you could definitely do out in the sagebrush that I forgot to film that I'll mention again. You could definitely do on a big bike. It wouldn't be that hard because it's not that technical, and the dirt was, as long as you have decent off-road tires. If you've got like an 80-20 tire, don't do it, like you'll get stuck. But if you've got like a 50-50 or better tire, you could do that section on a big bike. I would probably skip the single track. Like, I got my butt kicked on the Honda, and it doesn't weigh 300 pounds. So if it was me, I would kind of skip it. But here, like, here's the parking lot for the Slick Rock Trail. Or no, this is not the parking lot. This is kind of the last one of the parking lots for like Hell's Revenge and some of those more iconic trails there in Moab. But yeah, from here we kind of just cruise back down into town. And actually, I think this is a state park, so the way we came in, we didn't have to pay. But if you come up this way, and here's Lionsback that I kept talking a lot about, and you can see down as we come around the corner, they now have it gated off, so you can't get into there. But it's there up there on the right. That's Lionsback. But I remember coming out here in high school, and there's an area called the Bump Dump, which is like right here. And we were out there the first night, and our friend was like trying to climb up the bump dump in his Jeep and broke his axles. We had just gotten there. Like, we had been there for a couple hours, and he had already broken his rear axle, so he didn't have his Jeep, and it was a bit of a nightmare. But again, just some real cool views as you come back into town. Yeah, so that was it. 110 miles, I think we did. I have 3-gallon tank. Pretty much burned through all my gas. Not all of it. I still had a half tank. I think the light on the Honda comes on when you have about a half tank left. I'm averaging about 40, call it 45 miles to the gallon with the full Yoshimura exhaust. So I have the header pipe back, and I have the Vortex or Get ECU from Takamoto, and I'm getting about 45 miles to the gallon. So I could do 90 miles on 2 gallons. The light's coming on at about 110 miles, so that's another 20 miles. Yeah, so I probably have 135 miles before I would be dry, which is good to know. So that was it. It's a really long video because that route was really long. I wanted to give you the details. So if you stuck through it this far, leave a comment below. Tell me why you hated this video, why you thought the route was stupid, why you hate my glasses, why you hate my hair. Even maybe I should have wore a hat today. I had to do some business stuff today, so I had to comb my hair. And with that, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all the YouTube stuff. Until next time, stay safe out there.